Welcome to your Get That Nugget for GCSE English Language. Today we'll be concentrating on giving you a framework to answer English Language Paper 2 Question 5, the writing question. This session is to complement your lessons with your teachers and not to replace them in any way. So in our previous nugget, we had a look at the assessment objectives for this question, and I ran through what the expectations of a speech would be for the exam. What I want to do today is we're going to have a look at a question and how we break down that question, and then I'm going to show you an easy way to get a secure response by planning really well. So the question actually always gives us a bit of a helping hand, despite what they're asking you to write. So whether it's a speech, letter, article, blog, whatever it might be, the question itself is what sometimes will make people stumble. They are not expecting you to be any kind of expert or genius on every single topic they could possibly give you. No one's expecting that whatsoever. And I think a lot of the time when you see a question 5, you do look at it and think, well, I don't know, I have no idea. I don't know where to start. Now, this can be fixed by looking at this question, because they actually give you a bit of a gift within the question that can sometimes be missed. And this is like the most powerful tool I can give you. Every question that's ever been on an exam paper for question 5 has always included 3 things. So there's always 3 things within the question that you could possibly use and construct your answer around. Now, sometimes there's more than 3 and it can be different 3 that you want to pick, but there is always 3, I promise you that. Unless they change the questions from now, which is very, very, very unlikely, there is always 3. And even if there isn't 3, if they say they do change a question slightly, there will always be 2. They have to give you something. But at the moment, and all on the past exams, all of them, including things that haven't been published or things that haven't been an official paper, let's say an official exam, there's always 3. So your first job, and I have done this in a previous nugget, is this is going to actually give you a bit of confidence before you have to plan. Because when you get to the question, rather than looking at it and thinking, well, that's a lot of words, or I don't know where to start, if you pick your 3 out, then you can start constructing a plan around that. So let's have a look at this question. So people protest about the cruelty of keeping animals in captivity, but they seem happy enough to eat meat, keep pets and visit zoos. All animals should be free. So there's actually more than 3 in here, but depending on what you feel like comfortable talking about, you can pick the 3 that you want to talk. So let's think about, we're going to go with seem happy enough to eat meat, keep pets, visit zoos. And then I'm also going to do all animals should be free, because that can be something that I use within the text several times. I'm going to mention about a protest, but actually my 3 ideas are here. So eat meat and keep pets, visit zoos, and then all animals should be free. I'm going to go with that. And again, you can go whatever 3 you wanted to. You can do about the people protest about the cruelty and the double standards and that kind of idea. But it could be that you just want to mention that within the plan, which is probably what I'm going to do. But again, the 3 things that I picked out may be different to the 3 things that you pick out, and that's perfectly fine. It's about what you're comfortable writing. But that is the question that we are going to focus on, and that is the question that we are going to plan. Now, you may remember from a previous nugget the planning structure that I went through. And I did say that this planning structure can actually be used no matter what text type they give you. So it can be a speech, it can be an article, it can be a letter, and you can use the exact same planning structure. So this planning structure is there to help you and support you within this response. And if you use these 6 things, you've covered everything you need to. And you've been able to write a clear, hopefully concise answer, which will give us a really secure answer and obviously secure those marks that we want. Obviously, in the exam, you are not going to have time to use a planning sheet. You won't have one anyway, but you also don't have time. And it's the same rule as paper 1, question 5. So you've got about 10-ish minutes to plan, and you're not going to have 10 minutes to fill out an entire sheet that you will have to create. So obviously, this planning sheet is to get you practicing, and the more you practice planning sheets like this, the easier it's going to be to plan in an exam environment, and the quicker you're going to be at planning. And if you just remember these 6 sections and you do a quick 10-minute plan in your paper on the answer paper, so that your examiner can see what you'd planned, that's going to be really effective in helping you secure a good answer. And that's what this is about, isn't it? We want to make sure our answer is the best it can be. So what we're going to do is we're going to plan an answer for this question. I'm going to show you how to plan, and then in the following nugget we'll look at a response and write one, and I'll show you how to turn this into a response. So in an introduction, this is where we need to introduce our viewpoint, and we need to cover what we will discuss in our response. So what we don't want to do is we do not want to just repeat the question. We don't want that. We don't want to repeat the statement, do we? Because otherwise that's a waste of our time. It's also a waste of marking, because you're not going to get any marks for it. So there's literally no point repeating the statement. So we're not going to do that. Make sure you don't do that. But you need to make sure from the very first word you are writing whatever they've asked you to. So if they're asking you to write a speech, we need, in this introduction, we need that opening line to shout to our examiner, I am writing a speech, without saying I am writing a speech. So we need a clear address to an audience, and that could be something as simple as good morning. And let's think about who we're writing to. So we're writing a speech for your school. So why don't we put something like good morning, fellow students. So it's nice and simple. We haven't said anything about our content yet, but we've said this is a speech and this is what I'm going to be using in my speech. So nice and easily done. Also in the instructions I said we need a viewpoint that briefly covers. So I'm not going to write a viewpoint, but what you would need to do is within this, you would need to write something that links to the statement. So we need to link to the statement. And something more importantly, that's your viewpoint. So give a bit of an overview of what you believe to be true in terms of this question. And if you want to use some of the words, you can do, but do not, as I said, just repeat the statement, because otherwise you're going to lose precious time and you're not going to gain anything for it. Okay, and obviously you would do much more detail in here. You'd put your statement, you'd put what you're briefly going to cover in your response, what you're there to talk about, etc., etc. But for the purposes of this nugget, I don't have time to do that, but that should be much more detailed. But you get the idea from what an introduction should be. Try not to take it too long. An introduction should be no more than just a paragraph. 4 or 5 sentences is perfectly reasonable, because what you want to do is have a clear intro so that they can understand where you're going to go with it. But your ideas in the middle of the piece are obviously the most important. Your main body is the most important piece. Now, this is where we get to use our previous genius ideas. So our reasons are basically linked to the question. Okay, so if we're going to go in with, let's go with meat eaters and pets. So I'm going to go for that. My reason 2 is visit zoos. I'm also going to put things like circus in there because we know that that happens. And then my reason 3 is going to be that animals should be free. And then I'm going to put the idea that I may probably mention about protests and then why they should be free. Okay, my counter argument, I'll come back to the detail of these later, but the counter argument, this is something that I want to go through very clearly with you, because what you don't want, you do not want to write a for and against. Okay, so in the statement, sometimes they give you, it will say argue whether you agree or for against the statement. Just because it says that doesn't mean we're going back to primary school and old school vibe where we're writing about school uniform and you have like 4 paragraphs for for and 4 paragraphs for against. It isn't like that, because you don't want to go against what you've already written. You don't want to contradict yourself. So we have picked the side where we've supported the statement. We said that there are meat eaters, they keep animals as pets. We said that people visit zoos, they visit circuses, and that our third reason is that they should all be free, and why. So our counter argument can't then be something that doesn't support that. But what it is that you mention the other side, but then you bring it back to you. So you bring everything back to you and what you are trying to get your point across. So here you could say let's keep it really simple. The idea that animals provide food and they have done for centuries and more. Okay, so we keep it really, really simple, but we're going to use things like however, and then we go back into our ideas. So however, now we have alternatives, we have veg, we have, I don't know, tofu, etc, etc. Okay, there's lots of different things. I'm not going to go into the detail, but that's the idea. The way that you would write that is you would write things like, I understand that you may think animals provide food and they have done for centuries. However, there are now alternatives. So in a counter argument, I would always start with, I understand, or you may think, because you are not saying that the other side is wrong. You're addressing their idea and you're accepting their idea, but then you are bringing it back to you, which makes you seem much more powerful than they are. And you are trying to win this argument, remember, because you are trying to say that you are right. And that's very important. Don't contradict yourself. That's the most important thing that you can go with. You need to not contradict yourself. And then finally, conclusion. Now, this is the one thing that people tend to get a bit scared of with conclusion, and people always say, oh, I don't know what to write at the end. I don't know what to write. Well, conclusion, let's keep it really, really simple. You're just going to summarise what you've discussed in your response and maybe what action should be taken as a result. So my personal thing in a conclusion is keep it really short. I'm talking maybe 3 or 4 sentences. And within that, you want what's called a call to action. So you want people to act. So do you want to get them to sign up to, I don't know, not using animals as pets anymore, or get them to go to a vegetarian shop? Or that's quite simple and not as great as it could be, but you get the idea. A call to action. Let's stop eating our pets now. Something that grabs their attention is much more specific and much more effective. You're not asking them to go and do anything, because that would be quite basic. You're actually asking them, you're telling them, we need to do this. So it can be something like, let's grab their attention. Let's stop eating our pets now. Nice and simple. You could even use things like the names of pets. You could do things like, they talk about protest, so you can talk to them about trying to not protest, or there's no cruelty to animals in captivity, or is there? Because you're trying to protect the animals maybe. And think about what you can use, what you can leave it on, because what you want here is you definitely want a rhetorical question, and it's a great way to finish. And then of course, this is a speech, so you're going to have thank you for listening. This is just basically a summary of what you've done. Maybe you want to go back and mention a few of the ideas, but obviously don't repeat yourself. But more importantly, in a conclusion, is a call to action. So get them to think a certain way. This is your last chance to persuade them that they need to do something about it. Now, obviously, this is a speech, so you don't need any subtitles. They're there because this planning sheet is the same for articles and letters, as I've told you before. We obviously don't need subtitles in a speech, so if it's easier for you, just cross them out. But this needs a lot more detail. Obviously, I've just gone through for the purposes of the nuggets to show you how to do it. But within this, much like the creative writing planning sheet, you are going to want to have some of your techniques. So thinking back on DEFOREST and what I asked you to look at for the previous nugget, if you had your DEFOREST techniques in front of you, you can start thinking about, well, okay, I'm going to use a rhetorical question here, I'm going to use a triple here, I'm going to use a statistic, because you're trying to persuade in this question, you're trying to show them that you're correct. And within this, that's where you would put those techniques within your planning sheet. This planning sheet is so powerful because it covers everything that you would need to do and can make you construct a secure response. So in the previous nugget, I asked you to plan some DEFOREST techniques for the question. What you're going to do now is you're going to take the question that I gave you last time about the natural world is incredibly fragile and humans are most responsible for ruining it. And take that question, and now you're going to plan to write a speech. So use the planning sheet, use those 6 sections, and I'm sure if you gave that plan to your teacher to have a look at, they'd be really happy to give you some feedback on it before you write the response.